Welcome back to another episode of Nourish to Flourish with yours truly, Megan, the Trainer Registered Dietitian. And if you have ever gone to bed and woken up in the morning and stepped on the scale and all of a sudden it's like you've just gained 3 pounds overnight and have wondered where that comes from, I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. And it's probably coming from something called water weight. Now, you might be familiar with this in that our body has a couple of different components to it. We've got muscle, we've got bone, we've got blood, we've got fat tissue. But water is a big component of our mass, of our body composition, and it can change daily, and it can change throughout the day, as much as like 1 to 5 pounds throughout the day, depending on a whole bunch of things. So we're going to talk about some of those things, because I think sometimes we let the number on the scale tell us that we've gained fat tissue, and therefore we're a failure, we're not good at working on our goals, we're not accountable, we're not motivated, we're not blah, 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 blah. Whatever you want to call it. But I don't want you to let water weight convince you that your hard work is not working, because sometimes it still is, but water weight's just changing a little bit. And that's something that can be easily remedied, or something that does usually remedy itself kind of on its own. So the things that are going to influence our water weight, some of the big key players are things like salt. Obviously, I think that one usually comes to mind. We can all feel a little puffy whenever we've had maybe a saltier meal or have had a salty snack. So where salt goes, water is going to follow. That just gets down to just the chemistry of it, where sodium is passing, what water is doing, where all those electrons are floating. So if we've had something that's a little bit higher in salt, or again, a meal that's higher in salt, you can probably expect to hold on to a little bit more water and maybe see that reflected in the scale. And so it's not always as apparent as using the salt shaker at our meals. But sneaky things like breads and pastas and sauces and condiments can add up when it comes to sodium. So you might not feel like you had salty popcorn, for example, for a snack, but some of those other little sneaky sources can kind of add up. So that's number one. Number two, glucose and carbohydrates. Similar to sodium, where glucose goes, water also follows. So this isn't to say that carbohydrates are all bad, but it's literally in the name carbohydrate, and that there's water involved. So this is where it comes down to having a consistent intake, or knowing that if you have a lower carb day one day and then you have a higher carb day the next, that it's not because carbs are, again, contributing to fat mass, but they might be contributing to more water. So when we hold on to carbohydrates, the storage form is glycogen, and water is needed to store it there. So that's where that comes from. And this is where a lot of times some different diets and things, you'll see some mass kind of changes in terms of weight initially, and some of that is just kind of letting go of some water weight, because maybe we're being more mindful of our carb sources or how we're consuming our carbs. So that's going to be number two. Number three, something that's a little sneaky, is sleep can influence our water weight. So having a night with either a little less sleep or poor quality sleep can influence a whole slew of hormones, kind of cascade in a bunch of different reactions, and can even be viewed as a little bit of a stressor physiologically in our body, which is another factor that influences our water weight. Stress can play a role in that. I was actually just chatting with a client who was gone on vacation, and she felt like she actually kind of let herself off the hook with some of her food goals while she was vacationing. She wanted to enjoy herself and have some fun, and she had a couple of things in the back of her mind that she was going to stay accountable to, but being away from work for a week felt so nice. She came home and the scale was going in the direction that she wanted, and after a couple of days of getting back into her usual routine, still following her usual diet plan, she noticed that the scale started changing again. And the biggest culprit, I think, was coming back to work and kind of getting back into some of her everyday stressors that she didn't have when she was on vacation. Maybe you've noticed that too. So stress and sleep are also going to influence that. And then lastly, something else that I feel like we don't always appreciate is inflammation. So whenever we have inflammation in our body, if you think of rolling your ankle, your ankle swells up. So that's acute, localized inflammation going on. We're getting fluids to the area. Now, of course, this is a helpful response in acute settings. We want to have all of these nutrients coming in. We want to flush out all of these waste products. But when you are chronically inflamed and when you are systemically inflamed, it is like you are swollen everywhere. So if you feel puffy everywhere, you just feel like your body is just holding on to everything and you just feel squishy. Sometimes that can also be connected to inflammation being all over in the body. Now, some ways that we can reduce inflammation, it kind of comes in two different ways. We have to first support the things that reduce inflammation, and we have to stop doing the things that cause inflammation. So from a food perspective, this is where if we're having a lot of like trans fats or partially hydrogenated, kind of oils and things coming in, those can be highly inflammatory. Something else that can kind of contribute to inflammation is just highly processed foods. So usually they're not going to be as nutrient dense. Sometimes they're going to be filled with a lot of extra added sugar, a lot of refined carbohydrates, and sometimes those things can trigger inflammation in the body as well. So some things that can help reduce inflammation: high quality fats like fatty fish like salmon or tuna, avocados, nuts and seeds, and then we have some vitamins and minerals that can kind of double as antioxidants and support some different things from an inflammatory perspective. So if you can get a lot of rich color, think like blueberries, raspberries, spinach, peppers, sweet potatoes, get all that color, all of those color compounds are going to help with reducing inflammation. So again, my biggest thing that I want you to take away from this is water weight is going to change daily, hourly, what have you. And I don't want that to get in the way of thinking that your efforts are for naught, because fat and water are very different compounds, and I don't think anybody can ever gain 3 pounds of fat directly overnight, but we can see changes like that in water. So now that you know better, let's go ahead and do better so we can all be better.